welcome. I'm really, really excited you're here with us on a Saturday morning, for a whole day Saturday, in order to think about contemporary artistic practices under the current predicament through the lens of this wonderfully powerful, performative, rhetorical statement, once we were artists. Of course, this is not just a proclamation with this really remarkable performative power, but also, as you all know, of course, part of the title of the book in the series of BAK Critical Readers in Artist Practice titled Marion von Osten, Once We Were Artists. It's the publication edited by Tom Holert and myself, co-published by BAK Basis voor actuele kunst here in Utrecht, together with Valiz, Book and Culture Projects in Amsterdam, and let me say that we are really grateful for this collaboration. Published just a couple of hours ago. Now, as artistic director of BAK, I have great honor also on behalf of my entire team to offer a couple of remarks or notes, if you will, both on the context of this gathering as well as the practicalities concerning this day, as people are still coming in. So a couple of brief notes on the context first. It was some 3 years ago when I approached Tom Holert with a question: would he think with me about an artist to whose practice, whose work we could dedicate a next a reader in this series of the critical readers in artist practice. It will be following the reader we published in 2012 on artist Rabih Amroueh, which is this one. A brief note about what prompted back then in 2012, so relatively long time ago, what prompted us to begin with this series was actually a remarkable exhibition of Rabih Amroueh at BAK in 2010, titled I, the Undersigned. It was the first ever solo exhibition of Rabih Amroueh, which went largely unnoticed. No one noticed this remarkable exhibition at BAK, which completely shocked us, really. Of course, there were moved visitors, interesting conversations one-on-one when visiting the show, but there was no critical conversation about it. And we thought we need to create perhaps tools for initiating this critical conversation and unfold or begin or start this critical conversation ourselves. So that's how this series was actually born. And the idea of this whole series is to debate in depth artistic work that radically shifts perspectives and understandings of the space of art in the contemporary. One among the number of criteria for dedicating such a publication to an artist being the focus on a practice that has not yet been covered thoroughly, mainly because it escapes the conventional parameters of art writing, art publishing, and even theory. Now, after this caveat, maybe back to our conversation with Tom, because Tom, without thinking, said Marion von Osten. To quote from the foreword to the volume, which appears in a form of a conversation between Marion, Tom, and I, Tom claimed, "I see Marion's as quintessentially such a practice of art. It is as unique as it is persistent in questioning art's extant categories, as well as in its approaches toward art, toward curating, and toward the production of knowledge." Now, I was genuinely surprised by Tom coming up with Marion as an artist. To be sure, for me and for the part of the art world in which I move about, Marion is a well-known artist. And I must say that for decades, She has figured quite prominently, not just in the field, but in my professional life, as I have followed her practice, both on distance and through a number of collaborations, and learned a lot from, I have to say. I must confess that Marion's practice has inspired much of my work. I wanted to say curatorial work for the lack of better word, but this would not quite fare with Marion, because as you will see when you start reading this publication, it's precisely that which Tom has stressed in this brief statement I began with, that there are no categories, there are no vocabularies, extant vocabularies that actually could hold ground when you try to debate Marion's work. And it is a sort of practice that prompts us to think beyond contemporary art as we know it. But indeed, as an artist, feminist, organizer, curator, friend, collaborator, editor, lecturer, writer, researcher, participant, educator, comrade, in no particular order, and the list could go endlessly on and on, Marion's is a multifaceted practice that is as significant for the field of art and beyond as it is complex to unpack. Importantly, it is never standing alone, it's always in relation. Her culture work has been key in shaping the practice of art, that is the public sphere and political space. And it is about time, I agreed with Tom, to try to understand it in depth. And indeed learn from Marion's work, and mainly about how working from the conditions of the world can be turned into rewriting these conditions and become the art of constituting not just new imaginaries, but new realities. So the book, here it is, and as I caution, it was quite literally delivered just a couple of hours ago, and we only have a few copies available. Those of you who edit, publish, launch book, you will recognize the thriller phase of this process when you're waiting and hoping the book arrives in time and in good order, well printed, well cut and bound. We have a number of copies with remarkable contributions by Kader Attia, Sabet Buchmann and Judith Hope, Didrik Didriksen, Tom Holert, Brian Kuhn-Wood, Isabel Luray, Angela McRobin, Peter Spielmann, Marina Fischmidt and Tierdat Solgaard. Some of the contributors will be joining us throughout the day, and some are already here. And yet, this book will not be subject of this symposium today. Rather, starting from the provocative statement, once we were artists, we want to open up this conversation. We want to open up the discussion to other art practitioners and practices and seek ways of articulating how art concretely opens up a space of possibility, political possibility, if you will, in the present, and inquire into how do artists work today and why, and importantly, what is at stake. We have singled out two key points of orientation to open this conversation. One line of inquiry asks, what do we have in common? And the second looks at the notion of organizing difference. And I would like to offer an excerpt of Marion's from the foreword I mentioned in the book on this. Here it comes. And if I speak about ideas and relations, it is about imagining and testing out how we could be together differently, which is not a matter of purely artistic invention, but of movement. Movement in and out of the fields we know as art, theory, politics. It is this transversality that interests me. And this is not limited to exhibitions or events or projects, but includes new forms of self-organized infrastructures, micro-organizations, as I have called them, through which difference is organized. Both within and beyond the field of art and architecture, I see new collective structures of small translocal micro-organizations that are neither artist collectives, nor artist-run spaces, nor art centers that the colonial modern used to produce, and that are being generated for research, production, learning, gathering, dissemination, and action. They mark a new experimental field that is transversally and transculturally interconnected, both geopolitically and across the fields of art, architecture, design, pop culture, crafts, research, internet, culture, pedagogy, and institutional work, acting in the refusal of a monoculture conception of art and experimenting through affective practice with propositional vocabularies as to how to move about the present. Informed largely by feminist perspectives and the practices of de- and of-centering, these micro-organizations escape categorization settled in and by the field of contemporary art. Any attempt at definition falls short of capturing their dynamics and radical diversity, and as such, does disservice to the social culture work they deliver. As platforms for convening, they begin from asking, what do we have in common? What do we have in common, not just amongst culture producers, but with other societal members? That is a pathway into other modes of doing culture, culture in common, one in which those of us who once were artists have a lot to offer and share, albeit without taking charge or ownership of any such process or relationality underway. Now let me post my notes here on the context for this gathering and say a couple of things to the structure of the day. In a moment, I will offer the floor to Tom Holert, who will present his lecture to begin the conversation of today. And then my colleague and curator at BAK, Matteo Lucchetti, takes over to moderate the day and host talks and conversations with our remarkable guests today. I think this is the most exciting part of today. Remarkable people coming to join us for the conversation. Maria Papadimitriou, Joanna Varsha, Farid Rakun, Sven Luteken, and Ellen C. Weiss, after which Marion, Tom, and I will join the floor for a conversation and a plenary discussion. And then as I slowly, I ask Tom to prepare to take the floor from me, very quickly some practicalities. My colleagues at BAK prepared condensed handouts that I believe all of you have with quite everything you ever wanted to know. Including program information on all contributors and some practical information. Secondly, I want to inform you, as you probably noticed, that the entire event is being filmed. Lunch will be served at the back of this space, weather permitting, in the garden. I could have skipped this part of the remark. As Sven Luteken, upon his entry to this room, said, we cannot disappoint our foreign guests about the image of the Netherlands and the weather here. And after the symposium, you're all invited to join us for a drink. Now, as I mentioned, we have a couple of copies of this remarkable book with us. First comes, first serves, is that how they say it? So rush to get it. Fill in the form to become Books at BAK member, which allows you for the membership fee of €15. Receive this book for free. Go for it. And at last, with great thanks to all my colleagues who prepared this event, and I'm going to name them: Marion van Meeuwen, Matteo Lucchetti, Hide van Groningen, Bart Vebervee, Whitney Stark, Julia Steenhuizen, Marike Kuik, Lise Hermans, Ine van Leeuwen, Alejandro Navarrete, Angelina Kumar, and many others. I would like to offer the floor to Tom. Tom, the floor is yours, and thank you for being here.